Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you for showing up to our session. It's titled Community, the Heart of Your Customer Experience Strategy. So we'll be talking all about that in just a second. And I wanted to start off with the fact that I know that for some of you, it's super early. And for that, I really apologize. However, you'll be pleased to know that there will be a banger of a DJ right after this session for you and your first cup of coffee. I know that's what I always do. To enjoy as you ponder over all of the learnings from this session. So I think it actually works out great. Today, I am joined by Ben Anthonisz. He's the Manager of Customer Education at Bizzabo, and we'll actually also be discussing the Bizzabo community a lot. We'll do a quick introduction in a second, and then together we'll walk you through customer education at Bizzabo and their challenges, and more importantly, also how they're using community to solve all of those channels and to grow Bizzabo. I wanted to share a few random things in the beginning. So to help Comsor out a little, the sessions are recorded so that you know. We also want to be as practical as possible. So feel free to just shoot as many questions as you want into the chat. I'll definitely keep an eye out for them and ask them to Ben whenever I feel it's possible or whenever I need to stop Ben talking about different things. And then finally, feel free to also let me and Ben know what you thought of the session afterwards, as we're always learning. So I think that's super awesome to do. Good. So Ben, maybe if you don't mind doing a brief introduction of yourself.
Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you both, Remco and the Comsor team, for having me. So I'm Ben. I've been working with customers for the last 7 years in a variety of different places, from contact centers to support desks and all around. I joined Bizzabo in 2017 as a customer success manager. And then in 2019, I was successful in launching the customer education function here as well. As part of that launch of the customer education function, we purchased Insighted, our first community platform, which is how Remco and I got to know each other. So very excited to be here today to talk about how we were able to make community the heart of our customer experience and really make it a hub for people to learn about event technology and event best practices.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah, my name's Remco. Some things to note. I actually bought my first community in 2012. Unsurprisingly, that also was an Insighted community. It's funny how those things work. And then in 2018, I actually also joined Insighted to get the first inbound marketing cadence going. Insighted, just very briefly, community platform. We're super focused and only focused actually on SaaS and subscription-based companies, and specifically their customer success teams. I've put a few logos on the slide. Their communities are open, besides the Bizzabo one actually, which we'll talk about in a second. So check them out if you want. Let's get started. Are you ready, Ben?
Sure am.
Cool. Then let's start off with some context. What does customer education mean to Bizzabo, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I feel like customer education is what we're using at Bizzabo to describe a lot of our one-to-many strategies in the post-sale experience. So it involves both community, so obviously connecting people to all the different resources that we produce, technical writing in our help center, our customer academy, and of course, like just-in-time messaging to make sure people are receiving all of that information as it relates to creating an event. So it's just a support system that helps all of our colleagues and clients learn more and use our tools effectively and think about event success and less about the event technology that they're using to create event success.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's already pretty cool because that's a way broader expression on or a perspective on customer education as you would normally get, because normally I think it's more associated with an LMS or something like that, setting up trainings and courses.
Yeah, definitely. We just want to make sure that we're thinking of it as a holistic program to meet learners where they are. So everything from a high-touch onboarding experience to a self-guided LMS, like you mentioned, or of course the community where people are able to ask peers for insights and questions.
Awesome. Yeah, so on that sort of stack that you're just describing, we'll dive a little bit deeper into that in a second. But first, I wanted to look back at basically when you started with this. So what were some of the challenges that you were aiming to solve as you started out as the manager of customer education?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, go
ahead. I started my journey at Bizzabo as a customer success manager, looking over our Tech Touch program, so the larger book of business with many customers. And I felt like I was just repeating myself over and over and over again. So I thought there's got to be a better way. So that's how we arrived at customer education as the concept. I think the biggest challenge when I was assessing where to start was we had a really great help center that we were running on Zendesk, but it was not really owned by anyone, and it was very one-directional. It was very instructive. So it caused a lack of trust in content with both colleagues and clients alike, because it had a lot of product marketing content, it had a lot of old how-to content, and no one was confident that it was actually the tools that were going to teach someone something effectively. So I had a look around the marketplace and, found that community was probably the right path to not just giving instructional material, how-to content is what I like to call it, but also encourage that engagement and collaboration to talk about how to use that in the best practice. So the biggest challenge for me was kind of changing the perception of a help center from a help center, which is often a cost center. It's no one's job to maintain it, to a true community-led platform, which is not a cost center. It actually helps make and generate revenue, and it's far more than a one-directional path to provide people information. It's obviously multi-directional. So changing people's perceptions was definitely the hardest challenge, but very rewarding one to tackle.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then was that hard? Would you describe that as hard as in the sense that it was very difficult to explain what a community would offer or do more than a typical help center could? Or and also, and then maybe finally also, who did you actually need to talk to?
Yeah, of course. So I started off at the top, and I started working with our co-founder and chief customer officer, Alon, just talking about, why we needed to change the way we think of customer education in general. We did it kind of a bit of a crawl, walk, run approach. So the baseline was just we needed to get help center documentation. So just by virtue of replacing the platform and having completely brand new, fresh help center documentation, showed people that we can start trusting the information in there. So that was kind of a crawl phase. We're not even talking about community at this point. We just got to get it ready to go. But then the next phase was really interesting, which was when we're starting to provide best practices and leave questions at the bottom of those best practices to get people talking. And that was when we started to really introduce the concept of community to the company, because we got, our Slack conversations going on internally, and Sam saying such and such a customer is looking for how to provide more sponsorship revenue, and leading people back, actually we're having that conversation with a bunch of our top customers on the community now. So we've been able to start getting people to think, well, we don't actually have to keep all of this institutional knowledge within the four walls of Slack or Zoom or what have you. We're actually able to provide our insights back to the industry and the industry back to us. So it's definitely been successful to get our colleagues to start thinking, maybe instead of asking Slack, I'm going to actually directly ask the community and look to see if someone's already had that same thought.
Yeah, exactly. And was it then hard to get that initial engagement going within, your community, but for you, that's your customers. So was it difficult for them to then start also proactively sharing those best practices and for others to see that it actually works?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we're very blessed by the unique set of circumstances. Obviously, I'm at a community-led event today, and I like to tell people that, community and events are often two sides of the same coin. They're part of, one another's strategies. So I think event people are very used to community, which is very great. And then, of course, with, the new realities that COVID has foisted upon all of us, having people looking for genuine connections as well as looking for industry insights to kind of change the way that they tackle events. Tools like Hopin and the way that Bizzabo structures our event technology these days simply didn't exist 18 months ago. So people were very much looking to learn about the future of events, and they knew that it was going to be an uphill battle if they tried to reinvent the wheel by themselves. So I guess the key takeaway from that is, for a successful community, you have to have engaging and unique content that only exists there to drive people towards it and get them to engage.
Yeah, exactly. And then maybe an interesting question, but you started out saying, as a CSM, I felt like I was consistently repeating myself all the time. Mm-hmm. So what's that like now? Has that changed?
Yeah, definitely. And that's why we call it customer education, because we are working, for example, with our sales team. And part of our value propositions is, a group of 5,000 event professionals just like yourself in a private community that you can engage with. So we're socializing the idea of this is a benefit, this is a product, all the way from the sales process. Additionally, every single link, within the onboarding is pointing people towards the community to get Help Center content. But then we're also kicking off workflows to get people to, upload their picture, introduce themselves, ask seed questions. So we're marrying in community to our overall customer lifecycle, all the way from signature, pre-signature really, until renewal. So it's been very successful by having unique content, gated content, and making sure that people understand the value from the jump and weaving it into all the different programs, as opposed to making it its own tent pole that stands, next to the customer experience.
So you could say that the community then truly has a central location within customer experience.
Yeah, definitely. And, both for colleagues and clients alike, they know that that's where we're going to get the release notes. They know it's where the new feature that's released is going to be documented with the best practice. They know it's where to look to kind of work with our product team on validating new ideas and prototypes and the like. So it really is connecting people from our 3 offices to the customers and our customers to one another.
Awesome. Yeah. So to get really practical on that then, because that all sounds awesome, but when should you actually start looking at something like this? And then maybe also for you, how did you decide upon a platform? What were some of the key criteria that you were looking at?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the simplest is to start earlier, start as soon as possible. Community is kind of like compound interest. It gets better with time as people realize the value that they have of connecting to one another. So I would suggest start as early as you can convince your people to let you start. What was the second part of that question there, Remco?
Yeah, so what were the key criteria that you looked at when you were selecting a platform?
Yeah, that's perfect. So the first was that it integrated with all my tools. It's really important to me that community feels as an integral part of the customer experience, like I mentioned, and not a vestigial part. So it needed to have SSO, it needed to feed Salesforce and Gainsight the insights that we were learning about behaviors on the community. It needed to be able to, have a widget to put information back into our product and again, really connect it to the customer experience. So having that ability to connect to everything was really key. Another thing was just, a fresh, modern look. I think that's flexible. I think people are used to seeing, some pieces of technology throughout their lives, either as professionals or consumers, and prejudge things. So having that ability to have customization and a fresh look and feel was very important to me. And then finally, I really wanted an all-in-one solution that offered both Help Center content, community, and then obviously product ideation as well. So I really wanted to make sure that it was clear what type of content was what when I was selecting my tools.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's also an interesting notion, because we hear this more often now. And I think especially also in the growing landscape of SaaS, what you now see more and more is that one of the unique identifiers, if you will, that a lot of SaaS solutions are sporting currently, is that they integrate with virtually everything. So could you maybe describe, you already mentioned a few tools. So what are you actually integrating with, and also how that's helping you? So what can you do more by integrating?
Yeah, of course. So we integrate with our own platform. So our community is completely private. You must be a user of the platform in order to be a community member. The individual doesn't feel that because it all happens automatically with SSO connected to our platform. So that's one real key point there. Additionally, we connect to Salesforce and Gainsight. So we're able to look at a few different metrics, which we'll get into in a minute. So, adoption and engagement rates, and feed that to the individual CSMs to make sure that they're understanding what people are doing in the community. We also use Salesforce to visualize the types of feature requests and the weight of those feature requests that people are making within the community as well.
Yeah.
And then finally, we also embed our LMS. You can see it on that image there on the top right for our academy, to make sure that people are having a unified learning experience and they don't have to think about where they're searching for what.
Yeah. So does it also mean that if people want to, for example, find a certain course or whatever, certain educational content, do they then go to the community first and then through the community find the content that they're looking for? And for example, in the academy?
Yes.
Or what does a user journey look like?
Yeah, so a typical user journey would have someone visiting our community from within the product. You can see on the top right of that screen there, the organizer dashboard. That's our product, and it has the inverse within there. So that's typically how someone would arrive. And part of that user journey is, either searching for content within there or going into the academy to our LMS and having a structured learning experience about, how to design the best registration platform that converts, or how to increase your sponsorship revenue by 500,000. They're the kind of things that we put in the academy, things that are very structured about a specific outcome, whereas a lot of our content in the Help Center is about a specific action, and a community kind of weaves all of that together. Is like, I'm a specific organizer trying to achieve X or Y. What tools would you recommend, and when would you recommend using them to achieve that?
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I very quickly want to switch gears a little. I've put a screenshot of your community on the screen for everyone's benefit, because you already mentioned the Bizzabo community is a closed community. And that's also a topic that we often get questions about. Should a community be closed because it's customers only and you don't want anyone else to either view content or to participate in a conversation if they aren't a customer or aren't a customer yet? Or should it actually be open because it has X benefits and something else? But you guys chose for it to be a private community and put it behind a login. So how does that impact your community strategy? And can you maybe also share some of the considerations that went into making that choice?
Yeah, of course. So I'll start off with the challenges. I think one of the biggest challenges with having a closed community is a lot of community industry best practices may be more difficult to apply to your community. Engagement rates are going to look different. For example, our engagement at Bizzabo is much higher than what the industry standards suggest. So that just kind of makes benchmarking a little bit more challenging. But the benefit is that we are really able to understand what our users are doing. So we're tying community activity to revenue within Gainsight, for example, and using that as a leading indicator of customer health, which could help measure retention or renewal rates, right? So that's a really big benefit there. One of the things that the consideration of why we chose to do that is we had some very clear goals of why we needed a community, and it was to be able to have a higher CSM to ARR ratio and a lower support ticket to support rep ratio, right? We would assume that higher viewership would help inform that. And so having that closed community and the one-to-one relationship of users makes it easy to measure it. Today, though, with the success that we've had with community, if I had $1 for every time I had a colleague ask, when are we going to open the community? I'd have a few extra dollars, that's for sure. So as our next steps as an organization, we are trying to figure out what are the best ways of starting to open up certain parts of the community to both event professionals and as well as our clients' partners, because our partners are now needing to access this information too, while still providing that kind of safe space for our customers to ask questions that perhaps they wouldn't be comfortable asking on Twitter or LinkedIn or something more public. So lots of different considerations there, but we've seen a lot of success in starting off with a closed community that makes it easy for people to access it.
Yeah, I love that. Also, just answered my next question because I was going to ask, are you ever considering opening it up? But I can imagine that you want to do that carefully. I also fully agree with the whole safe space analogy. I think it can get difficult, especially if your community gets really crowded then. I think you guys have a lot of users, so there's also the potential for a lot of people then logging on that are just using the platform.
And I think with that kind of thought or sentiment, just like I launched the community with a goal of increasing that ARR to CSM ratio, you need to, in my opinion, open the community with a specific goal in mind. I know one of the biggest key things that people mention is using it as another revenue generation engine. So something that we're thinking about at the moment is, how do we use the community in our existing install base as a revenue generation engine for our account managers? That would be the proof of concept. Hey, we got XYZ revenue from community, and then apply that same understanding to open it up to more people. Yeah. And again, have specific goals and targets to make sure it doesn't become too unwieldy for a team of one.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's an awesome bridge into the next question, because that's the stuff that everyone always wants to know, and is a continuous debate, especially in community land, or debate in community land. How do you actually measure the success of a community, or what are some of the KPIs that you're measuring that define the success?
Yeah, a great question. I think, again, I've broken it down into three main phases. When we first launched, we were just looking at straight up user activation. How many users am I getting each month, each quarter, each year, and trying to set team targets for my education team to increase that by 25% quarter over quarter. Now, that's a great metric, and it's helped us build up, a really good base, but because, again, it's not an open community, adoption may not be the correct tool to measure the success of the community. So we've now transferred that to engagement, and not looking at the individual, but looking at engagement across each of the individual accounts, i.e. what percentage of potential users, people signed into the Bizzabo platform, have signed up for an account and made a specific action on the community. Remco's pulled up our tracker there where we're tracking the amount of active accounts and active accounts with visits this quarter. And that's what we're using to, make sure that we're creating campaigns that give people the reason to actually engage, comment, like, post on the community, and not just come and view something. So that's phase 2 where we're at the moment. And then based on that baseline, we're going to have enough data to start tying what does engagement mean as it relates to revenue, retention, and upsells. We need to have that baseline of what does engagement mean first, and then we're able to apply it to the revenue metrics that obviously people care about in SaaS a lot.
Yeah, and I think, again, awesome bridge. So I think I wanted to ask another question later, but maybe this is a nice bridge. So what does community engagement actually mean, or what does engagement actually mean? It's a difficult question because it means something else for your customers, but then also, for example, internally for the customer success team or for someone else, how do they view customer engagement, and how does that then tie into, for example, an initiative like community? Yeah.
So we've set targets at Bizzabo across all of our books of business for different engagement rates. For example, 90% of all customers need to have a specific touch point over a rolling 90-day period. So obviously our platinum customers have one-to-one relationships with their CSMs and account managers, so that's easy peasy. But what do we do about our digitally led customers where we need to apply one-to-many principles to engage them? So we're looking at, did that customer submit an idea? Did they like something? Did they comment? Did they post? And then feeding that information back to the CSM via Gainsight. So when they are doing their next call with that customer, they've already got a list of ideas that they know that they want to speak about without having to do all of that discovery manually. So we're using that engagement data on the digitally led customer success model to show a touch point that is automated, that shows intent to continue to participate with Bizzabo without it necessarily being like a one-to-one engagement, or a one-to-many but time-bound engagement like a webinar, which obviously requires a different amount of effort than organic engagement through the community.
Yeah, and is the tech touch segment for you guys then is that a whole different customer segment, or does it entail the activities that you do?
Yeah, so it's a different customer segment. So it has a pooled model of CSMs that service that group of people, and they rely heavily on the engagement metrics from community to make sure that their customers are finding value from Bizzabo, even if they're not actively requesting a conversation with the CSM. And just as a kind of side note, we run events just like this one and sort of our customers. So engagement is a tricky beast in the sense that people are going to be more engaged around an event. But if your community has content that is unique, compelling, it gives event professionals a reason to visit Bizzabo, even if they're not running an event today. Maybe they'll learn something about why they should run a new type of event, or how they could use Bizzabo to run an internal event and get more value from the platform.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So in the interest of time, I want to quickly discuss one more topic, which I think is, well, it's for us at least, is the number one question that we usually get, is how do I prove the value of community internally? And then especially towards executive teams that might be a little bit further from the initiative themselves, and might look at metrics that are a little bit higher up the chain than engagement, for example, might be. How do you handle this at Bizzabo?
Yeah, I think having a very specific goal and reason of what you want to achieve with community will prevent you from trying to do too many things all at once, because it's such a powerful tool that can achieve a lot all at the same time. So as I mentioned, we really were looking at reducing the support ticket to support rep ratio and increasing the ARR to CSM ratio. That's something that in SaaS, your VP of revenue operations is going to get and going to love. Tying those account adoption to engagement to those numbers is the way that I would suggest any SaaS business starts thinking about community, because it gives you a clear path to actually achieving that. And it shows improvement month over month, year over year, as you look at those metrics all together and rolling up to the executive level.
Yeah, and do you then, is that also a reporting thing? So is there also a report that goes from your department to an exec level?
Yep, so we do that in a number of different ways. So you showed the dashboards that we use at my team and the CS department level earlier. So they're asynchronous, anyone can access them at any time. We also have our community manager, Kayla. She goes ahead and with our colleague Gilan sends a customer insights newsletter combining insights from community, support, CS, Gainsight to the whole organization to tie them back to community as well. And then finally, we have our leadership meetings on a weekly basis at the CS team when we talk about whether those specific goals and metrics are on track or off track. And as a group discuss how can all of the individual programs feed back to actually achieve that goal that we agreed upon as a CS leadership team.
Super cool. I think that newsletter, that's something that a lot of more businesses should be doing. That's super cool. We almost have to wrap up already, actually. It's going really fast. And I've been told that the DJ will override us, whether we're done or not. So let's make sure that we get this done. I see that there are a few questions, at least one from Tex, who's asking, how did you craft your customer onboarding experience and user journey flow?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. We're very blessed that we have a research and experience team at Bizzabo. I asked that team to help me design close the loop calls with our most recently onboarded customers and start asking questions, funneling them down. What did you like about the onboarding experience? Do you find it successful? So on and so forth. We conducted about 15 of those, started plotting them against like the customer effort score, looking at community data. For example, are people reading the kind of content that would help them achieve these things we want them to do during onboarding, and then mapped out our touch points based off of those insights. So we're rolling that out, another version of that out at the minute, and we're going to call those same customers back, offer them a complimentary second onboarding to see if we've shifted the needle there, and continually iterate upon that process.
Awesome. Hope that makes sense also to you, Tex. I think it's really awesome, and I want to thank you for sharing all of the information and answering these questions. Yeah, I'm afraid we're out of time, so I can't ask any more. But thank you, Ben, and thank you, Community-Led Summit, for having us. Hope this was useful for everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Have a great event.